Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to Carve Your Own Fucking Path, Emtee from Toronto, Canada. And he's live in the studio, which is pretty awesome to see behind the scenes. So you're a music executive and a producer. We met each other 6 years ago outside of, I think
6 years.
6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. If I do my math right.
We're considered old friends at this point.
I think so. We go way back. And we met each other outside of a nightclub. I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. My memory is not the best, but we met each other outside of a nightclub in Medellin, Colombia. And I remember meeting you and your friends were like, do you know who he is? Like, he's a big time music guy, music executive. And so your friends were definitely, telling me who you were, which was cool.
They've also probably had a couple drinks in at that point.
True. I think we all had. Definitely. And so that's a little bit of like how we met each other. And, ever since then, I've been following you, of course, online. I got to see you a few years ago when I was in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And really, you have a very interesting story, which I'm excited to dive into because you have blazed this trail for yourself. And when we spoke just a little while ago, you had said that this was something like music was something that you knew you were going to be involved in. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the hardest industries to get into. I can only imagine. I have no idea.
That's what they say.
It's what they say, right? And so I think, well, first of all, thanks for being here and for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So take us back, like a little bit of your backstory from when you decided that you're going to start carving this path in music.
Yeah. Music. Okay. So, music has been in my life for many, many, many years. I think as a young kid, my dad was a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And so he specifically played the Spanish classical guitar, and he would be playing the guitar all the time at home and just kind of jamming out and stuff like that. And so the guitar was really the first instrument that I really fell in love with. And so when you're asking a little bit about I guess the better question is probably like when I fell in love with music itself. Mm-hmm. That's probably what it was. And I attribute a lot of my love and appreciation for music definitely to my father. Like I said, as a young child, he was always playing the guitar. And the funny part is that I actually never played an instrument for many years. So when I'm talking about appreciating music, it literally just means me listening to my dad play guitar. Mm-hmm. And so, growing up, as I got into my teenage years and junior high into high school, and I started getting into hip hop a little bit more. The area that I grew up in, which is at the I mean, at the time in Toronto, it's kind of notorious for being a little bit more of a lower income area, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, my neighborhood very much had a lot of hip hop influences. So a lot of my friends were listening to it. A lot of our culture and upbringing very much like revolved around this hip hop thing. And so you kind of had this weird clash of Spanish classical guitar and like hip hop, which in a lot of ways didn't really mesh much, right? I would kind of go to school and my friends would introduce me to things like artists like Snoop Dogg or like Dr. Dre or Eminem. And I'd go home and listen to Carlos Santana, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think what really drew me to music was just the feelings that I got, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think as a kid, I never really felt like I fit in. And this was because a lot of different reasons. At that time, was being taken to church every Sunday, Christian church specifically.
Uh-huh.
And my parents had me go to a Catholic school, which at that time was supposed to be more disciplined and whatnot. I was in a predominantly African American area, so obviously I'm not, and so I kind of had that disconnect there. And then later on, I went to high school. My parents moved me out to an area called Woodbridge, which was predominantly Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
And so between my kindergarten to high school years, you know, I didn't really feel accepted anywhere. And I didn't really understand this. And I'm getting somewhere with this, by the way. This is not a therapist thing, but
I want to hear it all.
I sound like I'm like going through therapy or something. But the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, during my time growing up, you know, a lot of kids get asked like, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Right. What do you want to be? What are you passionate about? What do you like? And the issue that I had was like, well, I don't freaking know. Right. Like I was in a place where I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. I didn't really feel like I had similar interests to different people. Right. You know, I go to school and almost like try to connect with the hip hop thing, which didn't really connect with me. I would go home and listen to this Carlos Santana stuff, which obviously was kind of left field for me as well. So I'd go to a Christian church while going to a Catholic school. I'd be, you know, the one Chinese, Indonesian, Asian kid in a predominantly African American area. So it was just like a confusing time. Like I didn't know how to identify what I wanted because I didn't know who I was, in a sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I listened, the only thing that I knew coming out of high school was that like I had this feeling whenever I listened to music. It was the only time that I actually felt like, okay, like this is actually something I enjoy, I actually want to do, right? And I have a feeling that I like feeling, like the feeling of acceptance and the feeling of like I don't have to pretend or try to fit in somewhere into some sort of mold. And so that's really the feeling that I wanted to hold on as I went into my future. And so when I graduated high school, I went into university and I just told myself, man, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea, but I love this feeling. This is the only time I'm very confident in the fact that this is what I want to be when I grow up. And I kid you not, right before that, when people used to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Even right up high school, I would tell them, I want to be a ninja.
Wow. What did that mean?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was literally an answer that I threw out there when I was younger. And I just kept on using it as a joke almost, as if like I'm being comedic, you know what I mean? But really deep down inside, I'm like, I don't freaking know. Like, I don't know. I like music. That doesn't really answer your question, but I don't know, right? I don't know where I'm going to be. And so when I went to university, I told myself, you know what? I'm going to do whatever it takes to feel this feeling, the same feeling that I have when I'm listening to music and I'm, like just taking it all in and feeling comfortable, feeling at peace with where I'm at, and feeling like I'm doing what I want to do, and feeling like I'm being what I'm supposed to be. And that was really the feeling that I was trying to chase, and look for. And so I got into university. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it all. I don't know what music, careers there are. I don't know how to get into the music business, but anything remotely connected to music, I'm going to try it. Mm-hmm. So I went from trying photography to shooting, musicians, right? Okay. To doing open mic nights, to engineering and mixing live shows, to promoting clubs, to connecting with DJs, to emceeing clubs. Even in first year university, I literally purchased a $100 mic from the music store here along in McQuaid's, literally plugged it into my laptop and started recording people. I'd be like, hey, like, you need a studio? Come over to my dorm room and record your demo. You know what I mean? And this is literally what I was doing. And, little did a lot of these artists know, like, I was charging these artists a little bit as well. Like back then, being like, yeah, like I'm an engineer, you know what I mean? Little did they know, I was like, well, I'm going to just, that's, I have a mic. I could press play. I could press record. Like, let's do it. Right. So I was literally trying it all until finally, in my final years, I actually signed up for this. This is going to be so funny, but because I look back at these videos, my wife and I look back at this video and we die of laughter, but I actually signed up to become a Much Music VJ. So for those of you who don't know what that is, Much Music is basically kind of like the MTV of Canada, essentially, or was at least. There were, top 10 music videos of the week type of thing. And you had a VJ and they would interview celebrities as they came into town and give away contests, all that stuff, right? And so I signed up for this thing, made this like 3-minute video or whatever it may be. And I didn't get it, by the way. But during that time period, I put it out on YouTube. Now, mind you, this is like 2009, maybe 2008, 2010. So like this whole idea of social media was not really a thing at that moment. Like things like marketing and advertising still meant, posters on the wall and flyers at the door. It was a different time, and I, for whatever odd reason, put this thing on YouTube. And then I remember starting a Twitter account.
Wow. Early adopter.
Yeah. Super early. I got the Mike T handle and everything, MICTEE. And so I was doing it like out of like, oh, like my roommate was like, there's this new thing called Twitter. You should try it out. All right. Like, so I started tweeting about my video, and long story short, in the city of Waterloo, Kitchener, Ontario, which is where my university was at, it quote unquote, I kind of got viral, I ended up amassing like 5,000 followers in the span of like a week. My video, my audition video got like 20,000 views, which at that time was like, holy crap. Like, I don't even know 20,000 people, right? Like, how did I get 20,000 views type of thing? I would be like walking around campus and people would recognize me and be like, yo, like, I love your video type of thing. And I was like, this is so cool, right? And long story short, like I kind of started experiencing this feeling of popularity. And so that popularity ended up landing me a situation with this rap group on campus. Because what had happened was, I don't know if you remember the song by Wiz Khalifa, Black and Yellow, Black and Yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Yellow.
Love that song.
So I don't know if this happened in the States, but in Canada, specifically Ontario, all the colleges and universities did kind of their rendition of it, and like use their kind of school colors. Ours was Laurier, Golden Hawks. Our whole thing was gold and purple. And so we shot a video, all this stuff. We threw this big party. I felt so cool back then. Now that I look back, I'm like, I was kind of a loser probably, but shot the video.
It's a big deal.
Put it out, and then after getting so much love for the 20,000 views on my audition video, we ended up amassing 50,000 views again in 2010, maybe 2009 type of thing. Again, like my popularity got bigger. And that ended up leading me to joining a group on campus called the A Team. And basically what this group was they were the student group in charge of booking all the shows, kind of like interacting with a lot of the concert bookers and managers of artists. And I was meeting people like Carnell Fischel and, Mariana's Trench and trying to think who else. Metric. So a lot of cool people that I ended up connecting with. So that was kind of my first experience with like the quote unquote industry. I was able to kind of meet artists and managers, and this whole idea of popularity, essentially, During that same time, there was a club being opened up on campus called The Turret. And they were going through a rebrand and changing a bunch of different things. And the big thing that they were trying to get on board was an MC, so somebody to basically host the events. So I ended up getting hired on board because they saw like, well, look at my following on Twitter. Like, we need all the students to come out. If he tweets about this, like all these students are going to come out. So I pretty much took advantage of the popularity I had on social media at that time to bring out as many students as possible. So I was out here like, I probably was getting paid like maybe like $100 a night, like every single Saturday. And they'd give me a bunch of free drink tickets so I could give them out type of thing. So I was literally everybody's best friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone wants the free drinks at the club, right?
Yeah. You're the guy.
Yeah, I'm the guy. And so when I graduated, I pretty much took all this experience that I had and basically told myself like, hey, let's just start connecting, I was hearing all this stuff about like in music, you got to network, you got to connect and meet with a lot of people. And so that's just kind of what I did. I continued on a lot of my relationships that I had with music programmers and managers, picking their brains, reading books. And until finally I met my manager at that time, who brought me on board as a songwriter. And it was an interesting experience because before that time, I was kind of doing my own artistry ever since the whole Black and Yellow remix thing. So I was kind of rapping actually. So I was in the studio, I was working so hard. It was literally one of those situations where like I churn out maybe 50 songs in the span of like 50, like a couple hours type of thing. And it was like, I was in it to win it, like I was like, I'm going all in type of thing. So I got noticed by this manager, got signed on board for management. And then things kind of started rolling from there because that manager ended up going out to Miami, connecting with a guy named Pharrell. And that's kind of when things started snowballing. I started submitting music to Pharrell, and he was connecting with other people like Flo Rida, Pitbull, Justin Bieber's manager. Wow. So my music that I was writing here in Toronto was literally getting out in Florida to all these different artists, specifically as a ghostwriter and ghost producer. So I was kind of in the background, nameless basically, but kind of somewhat enjoying some of the lifestyle of experiencing and connecting with some of these atmospheres, right? And these worlds for that matter. And so, sorry, did you have a question?
Well, what you said was, well, first, so identity is so huge because you went from, it sounds like just having a passion for music, and that I love that you talked about the feeling that you were driven by a feeling that you were wanting to recreate. It was like, was fame, fortune, and this lifestyle, was that even in your vision? Or was it like, I just want to have that feeling?
Not initially. Because like I said, the only reason why I answered that, like if nobody asked me what you want to be when you grow up, I probably would never have thought of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like when you're growing up, you get asked this question all the time. And I mean, this is my opinion. I think it's one issue that a lot of kids have coming out of high school is that they're expected to have this understanding of an answer to answer this question, right? It's like you ask them this question. That's like, imagine being like today, we're a little bit older. Imagine being asked, hey, what do you want to be in 20 years?
Right. Such a hard
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Like, it's not even like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you see yourself being around, or what do you want to be? That is a loaded question.
It is.
You know?
It's such cultural conditioning as well, because first of all, it's always forward moving, right? It's always the future. It's never, like, rarely in the moment. And it sounds like in your childhood or, as a teen, there was a lot of pressure on that. Was it coming mainly from your parents?
Partially, but I think it's more so, I don't know where exactly it came from. You know what I mean? Like, I think, when you're growing up, everybody asks you that, right? It's not just your parents. Like, I don't put it on my parents. Family members, friends, even teachers, obviously. They're always expecting us to be able to answer this question, and like I said, like my answer was ninja because I was trying to be funny, but the real half was more so, I didn't know how the hell to answer that question.
Yeah.
And realistically, at 13, 14, 15, 16, and older for that matter, it's very tough to believe that we as a society expect them to be able to answer that question. And if they can't, it's like, this kid's going nowhere in life, like, right. You got to start thinking of your future, it's like, no, like, I need to think about that question because I don't think I could answer that. And it's funny because it's like, if we actually allowed people to sit back a little bit and say, here's the question, uncover it a little bit,
Yep.
People would probably turn out a little bit more happier and a little bit more focused, a little bit more clear, and yeah, I think that's what I felt, That's why I threw out that ninja thing, because it's like, well, at least somebody's going to laugh about it, right?
Right. And then to see people's reaction.
Exactly.
As well. And so that is such a great story of like, just putting yourself out there, one thing leads to another. That level of confidence that it sounds like you had. So like that entrepreneurial element where you're charging people, like you were charging people in your dorm room to come and record. Where did that come from? Was that just something you just started playing the role, or did that take a while to develop?
I just thought that was what was supposed to happen. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you go to a studio, you pay the studio, and the studio makes music for you. And that's just kind of, this was my ideology of music, right? Like and that, like I said, I didn't know there was, now I do, that there's so many different positions in the music industry and any industry for that matter. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at that time, it was like, well, like if I want to do music, I guess the only thing that I could actually do is make the music. I think I could be good at it. And obviously a job is to pay the bills. So I guess I should charge people for doing it. so that I could pay the bills. So then maybe I could answer this question of what are you going to be when you grow up? You know what I mean? So it's like,
it all stems back. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really my mode of my pathway of thinking, I guess. And it's so funny that you say like confidence, because I think I definitely wasn't confident back then, or at least deep down inside. Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Yeah. Really? Okay.
You know what I mean? Not at all.
So the next question, and this is always something, when I talk to entrepreneurs, but especially like unconventional ones that are completely, like you doing your own thing. And it sounds like you were playing this role and you stepped into it confidently. Now that's on the outside. What was going on the inside sounds like it was much different. And so when you started interfacing with these huge names and writing their music, was this like, tell me about that experience. Did it feel surreal? Was it like?
For sure. When it first started, so I probably started doing this stuff probably in 2011, 2012, right? So shortly after university. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of other stories in between that time period, but that's probably when things started off. And when it was first happening, I was ecstatic, obviously. When you're in rooms and like, when you're in a studio and you walk outside and Pharrell's pacing back and forth in the parking lot, or like, it's 10 p.m. at night and you go grab some tea, and I look beside me and Lil Wayne's grabbing some tea beside me as well. It's interesting, right? Like, it's kind of like, sometimes I have to kind of like, okay, like, I hope I didn't stare too long there. You know what I mean? Like, like,
don't be awkward.
So it was definitely surreal. And I think, for me personally speaking, I think it was a very big confidence booster, mm-hmm. because when you start being in close vicinity to these type of people, you really start realizing and understand, because these are people who are very much loved and beloved for that matter in society, Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned, when I was younger, all I wanted was to be accepted. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm beside these people, it almost gives me that feeling of like, oh man, like I'm loved too. I must be kind of loved, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm a couple degrees apart from these people. Like I must have some of that. And I think the thing that started snowballing that feeling was when I started traveling around a little bit more. So I wasn't really seeing a lot of my family members and my friends, and I was missing a lot of stuff. But every so often I would come home and come to a wedding, Mm-hmm. And I would be the talk of the wedding. I'd be like, oh, like, did you talk to Mike? He was like with Chris Brown last week at the club, or like, oh, like, did Mike tell you about it? Like, I was like the shit, like I was like, sorry, can we swear?
The name of it.
Okay, I figured. I felt like I was the shit, right? Like I felt so cool. I had like this, puffed up chest as I'm walking around, and like people would tell me like, like, I'm finishing up my master's or something, or like I just got this job at this accounting firm, and I'd be like, like I was just at a VIP booth in Miami with DJ Khaled, right? A couple of days ago, type of thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the type of conversations I was having. And in a lot of ways, it kind of gave me this confidence that now I know was kind of false confidence, in all honesty. Mm-hmm. And right up to my friends when we were in Colombia, right? My friends are like boosting about me. And I'm sure, like, I hope you remember, like, I don't like talking about this stuff. Like, personally, I don't.
I do remember that,
I'm actually a very timid person. I'm very to myself. I don't typically like talking about my personal life. I don't typically post a bunch of my personal. I'm only doing it now because, it's social media, and like my publicists and marketing people are telling me like, you got to be more personable, Mike.
Yeah.
And, but like naturally, I very much, I wouldn't call myself an introvert, but I like being by myself. I like being quiet. I enjoy sitting back a little bit and allowing people to speak. So even like those moments when my friends are like, do you know who this guy is? Like, do you know who he's aligned with? Blah, blah, blah. In my head, I'm just like, oh man, like, like.
Yeah. Well, you're very humble.
The funny part is that I wouldn't even call it humble, because like I feel like people who are humble are like, they try to like, they're in this peaceful place where they're confident in themselves that they don't have to talk about it. I'm more so fearful. Like I am thinking about what that other person will think. Like, are they going to think I'm cocky? Are they going to think I'm boasting a little bit or showing off? Like I think about this stuff.
To this day.
It's to this day. Yeah. Absolutely. To this day. And ironically, I'm in this hip hop genre that is super braggadocious and super like
I love
flashy. And and it was just kind of this weird conflict that I had deep down inside, where like I started embodying this confidence. Like at weddings, I'm puffing my chest and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But deep down inside, I was like cringing almost, and I wasn't happy in a lot of ways.
And what was that? Can you like talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when I got into music, I quickly realized there was because mind you, there's one part of the story that I'm kind of leaving out, which is that I did do some 9-to-5 work in an office prior to this, in between stuff, Mm-hmm. In fact, the story I always tell my current artist that I work with, an artist that I'm kind of giving advice to and whatnot. So there was one point where I was working in downtown Toronto, 9-to-5, Monday to Fridays, right? Friday mornings, I'll wake up super early to get to the office super early so I can leave with my suitcase straight to the airport, take the first flight out to Miami, work for the weekend and stay there till Monday, like midnight-ish, catch the red eye back to Toronto just on time to sleep a couple of hours and then catch my 9 a.m. shift on a Monday. And I was literally doing this for like a year to 2 years. I don't recommend this for anyone, by the way. Like I look back now and I'm like, damn, like I was killing myself. Like that was, and I think for me, it was like, I was embodying this whole music industry. I'm on my grind. I'm doing my thing. This is what I'm supposed to do. All right. And which leads to my next thing that I was getting at, which is that I quickly found out that there was a difference in ideologies in the office atmosphere and the creative realm. And the funny part is both these different types of people talk shit about each other. Like you have the people in the office jobs being like, no, like you can't make money off of music. Like, what are you going to do? Like, and then you have people in music being like, well, like, yeah, they're just like 9-to-5ers. They're just accountant jobs. Like they don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And in a lot of ways, because I was so accustomed to being around these creatives and these music people who were almost downplaying the importance of a 9-to-5 or like the validity of a 9-to-5.
Right.
I started embodying that myself. And like, I started thinking like, yeah, like I don't need a 9-to-5, right? I don't need to work in the office. I'm going to work myself. I'm going to do creative work. I'm going to do what I love. You know?
My passion.
I'm doing it all. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna party on Fridays if I want. I'm gonna party on a Tuesday if I want. You know what I mean? I'm gonna drink if I want. I'm gonna, like go to the studio and stay up until 5 a.m. in the morning if I want. I'm gonna do it all, right? And we kind of spoke about this the other day, and it's so funny because in chasing this life with no borders and limits, I put myself in a life with borders and limits. Because when I started thinking that way, I started like, well, I can't have a girlfriend, right? No, I can't do that. I can't go to all the weddings of my cousins. No, I can't do that. I got to work, right? I can't not drink tonight. What? Like, no, I can't do that. I'm a music guy. I gotta drink, right? Like, and I was starting to embody, like, put myself in the box of like, well, this is the music guy, so like, I got to do this.
Yeah. So the
and
identity
it's so funny.
was
Exactly.
crafted. Yeah. From
exactly.
Okay, this is so fascinating because you were living in two worlds at the same time again, and sounds like this. Did you feel like the push pull, as in you're in one kind of trying to identify with the 9-to-5ers, like make a living, be responsible, and then you have the other?
At that time, no, because at that time I was fully pro creative, self-employed dude at that point, So I was in a lot of ways trapped in this creative mindset where like, nah, I don't need this 9-to-5, Monday to Friday. In all honesty, the only reason why I actually went for it is to show my parents, hey, like I got this degree. I did go to school, by the way. All the kids listening out there. I did go to school. So I got a degree in honors philosophy, business management. I also got a postgrad in corporate communications and public relations.
Wow.
So I did all that. Huge advocate of education, by the way. However way that looks for people out there, right?
Yeah.
And I got the 9-to-5 thing because I was like, okay, like to prove to my parents and prove to myself that like I could get a job, And when I did that and it wasn't that hard, I was just kind of like, I could probably do this. Like if I go for music and all else fails, I could probably do this again. I could probably apply again and get another job. Like this wasn't that tough. It took a little work for sure. It took a little time, got a couple of rejections, but I got a job, like it wasn't impossible. So I was like, well, hey, I mean, like, I still love music at that point. Right. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I was at. But to answer your question, I didn't feel the push and pull. I think internally I probably did feel it, but externally and like in my mind, I was very much, I'm a creative dude, like I'm a music guy.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of the interview with Mike T. To catch the second part of the interview, head on over to the next episode that says part 2. I'll see you there. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.